Let's say I talk to you in a language that you don't understand. How would you perceive the information? Or how would you understand what I say? So, in modern days, we have language translators, apps, and device. So, just think of this. Let's say you developed a programming language called Neo. Now, you developed this programming language in your garage and you have written a code, say put a equal to 5 and say r equal to high. Now this put and say are basically keywords. It is saying what to do with this. So only you understand this. Now when you try to run this code in a Windows or a Mac PC, it wouldn't understand what you are trying to say. For the OS, it's basically some string, right? Some numbers and letters. It doesn't understand what you try to imply by saying put and say. So for the OS to understand, you have to have something called a runtime environment. Now, who creates that runtime environment? For your programming language, you have to create a runtime environment. Now, for Java, so you can't just run a Java code in a machine without a Java runtime environment. So Java itself gives a Java runtime environment so that the Java code can be executed in a machine. Now this is how an assembly language looks. Now the reason I showed you the assembly languages, so high level languages are pretty much converted into assembly language and then machine code. So how that is possible is the code that you write in high level language. So high level language are pretty much the Java, Python, JavaScript. All these languages are high level language that a user can understand, that a programmer can understand. Now these runtime environment that actually executes this code has to understand this code. So obviously for a Java, it has been done by, or it has been developed by Java's Java's team of programmers. So when you have a new programming language called Neo, so your code has to be executed by a runtime environment which is developed by you. Okay, so you will basically write that runtime environment in assembly language, because whatever code you have written, that has to be converted into machine code. So that's what the runtime environment does. So this is basically how your code or any programming language's code is being executed. An OS can't just understand all the programming languages. Now think of this. In Windows machine, .NET is mostly installed. In any Windows installed PC, if you consider, .NET is already installed. If you have an application, that application might be Word or anything, if it was developed by using the .NET language or framework, it will get executed in Windows. But let's say there is a piece of code. Let's say you have a piece of code, a Java code that you want to execute in your machine. The Java code won't get executed unless you have a Java runtime environment. Now, all that said, do you think you are using any runtime environment in your machine? In your daily usage, do you think, is there any runtime environment that you use in your machine? Yes, you do. So Safari, Firefox, Chrome, Edge, Opera, and many more browsers available, they were all runtime environment. Now you might be wondering, how is this a runtime environment? I am not running any code here. In fact, without your knowledge, you actually run code in the browser. I'll show you how. Now, the browser can understand only 3 languages. It doesn't understand React, Angular, JS, all that. It only understands HTML, CSS and JavaScript. Other than this, it can't understand any other programming language. I'll show you. Now, the first time when you browse a website, let's say you do this imdb.com, what happens is there is a HTML file in a server, preferably saved in the imdb.com server. So that HTML file gets downloaded into the browser and the browser executes that HTML file. So it will be a combination of HTML, CSS and JavaScript file. Sometimes even HTML and CSS, if it's just, sometimes it could be a dynamic site and sometimes it could be a static site. We'll see more about that in the upcoming videos. So this is what happens. The HTML, CSS and JavaScript files, they all gets downloaded into browser and the browser executes that. It is not executed in the server, the browser executes that. So what is a HTML, what is a CSS and what is a JavaScript? So if you think of HTML, see, this is a text, this is an image and this could be a link. So all these are elements, right? So HTML just represents the elements. Now it is of this font and it is in the yellow color and it has been aligned on the left. All this design stuff, the color, the font and the size and how it has been aligned, that is taken care by the CSS. CSS is actually not a programming language, but CSS is a computer language. So browser, any browser, not just Chrome, but Chrome is one popular browser and it has the highest market share. But so the browser, it understands only HTML, CSS and JavaScript. HTML, like I said, it only, its job is to basically show the elements. So these are all the elements, what elements has to be shown. Now we'll think of JavaScript. See, when I click here, if you could see, there's something happens. The page actually refreshes. So the page actually talks to the server, imdb.com. So all these data, it goes to the server and it says there is the texts are basically empty. So that was actually checked in the server side. So every time you click here, it actually goes to the server side and the data has been validated and it's been told that these data is not there and it has to be mandatory. So there is no JavaScript involved here. Whereas when you look at this Facebook's registration, when you click at it, see, nothing is being refreshed. It immediately responds to it. Whereas here, it doesn't immediately respond to that. It immediately responds here because the JavaScript file is also being executed in the browser. So the Facebook register page, it involves a HTML, CSS and a JavaScript. The JavaScript is used here to do some actions. So HTML is for the element, CSS is for the styling and JavaScript is to do some actions. So the actions that it does here is checking whether if these texts are being entered, if it is not entered, all these validations are done and the validations are shown here. So that is the purpose of JavaScript. So JavaScript pretty much takes care of any action or say, validation is one thing that happens here. That is why JavaScript initially came into picture, but now JavaScript is used for whole lot of operations.